Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of InCoB 2020. And we have had a very long sessions since yesterday. And this is, as you know, the 19th InCoB. So we have seen many presenters, but we are very happy to welcome back Nikki as a keynote speaker today, Professor Nicola Mulder from South Africa, who in her own right has her research going on in pathogen genomics and various other areas. But she is also a pioneer in bioinformatics education. And today she will be talking to us about her contributions to global bioinformatics education on behalf of the GOBLET consortium. So we welcome Nicola to this conference, and we request her to get started by switching on the video and unmuting her mic and getting going. Welcome, Nicola.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I will share my screen. Okay, so I'm pleased to talk here at this InCoB meeting about global activities in bioinformatics education and training. So just to give an outline, I'll be talking about the challenges in bioinformatics training and training in general, some of the global efforts that we've undertaken to address these challenges. And through this, I'll be talking a bit about H3A Bionet experiences, which have really been in running a big, diverse training program in low and middle income countries. So H3A Bionet is a Pan-African bioinformatics network, which is part of the H3 Africa consortium. H3 Africa stands for Human Hereditary and Health in Africa. And it was a big consortium that was developed to look at the genetic and environmental basis for diseases in Africa. And H3A Bionet is this Pan-African bioinformatics network that was established to build the capacity, the bioinformatics capacity and training and infrastructure and tools to enable genomics research on the continent. So I'll be drawing on these experiences as some examples when I go through the challenges and solutions. And then if there's time, I'll give you a very brief discussion on other learning activities and our future plans. So we have a lot of general challenges in training, and this is because often we have people put into trainer positions who haven't really had training in how to train. So people come through the ranks as academics, and you get no formal qualification in how to design courses, how to run courses, and how to impart that knowledge to the trainees. There's also a challenge in making sure your training materials are always up to date and you contain the latest information and you've got the right tools, and particularly for bioinformatics, having practice data sets. We often have to teach a mixed audience, particularly in bioinformatics. And so you need to be able to keep the audience engaged, and you need to make sure that they are gaining particular competencies and coming out with the rest of the required skills. And of course, with the COVID now, we have big challenges in having to take everything virtual. And specifically in bioinformatics, there's a huge demand for training in bioinformatics, especially in Africa, where there are so few people who are trained in how to analyze data, but also how to be bioinformaticians. And of course, bioinformatics, the topics are vast and they change all the time. There's the new technologies, the new algorithms, things are changing very fast in bioinformatics. So you need to keep up with that. The audiences, as I say, are very broad and they need different levels of competency. So the amount of information you need to give a bioinformatics user is quite different to the amount of information you need to, and the level of information you need to give to somebody who's going to become a bioinformatician and be the one who develops and runs these algorithms. And then the competencies often require underlying skills for bioinformatics, like knowledge of statistics or programming, before you can actually teach the rest. And then training requires theory and hands-on practice, because bioinformatics is very practical. And unlike something like biochemistry, where you have standard traditional degrees in it, there are very few people coming into our bioinformatics training classrooms that have some sort of formal training in bioinformatics. So we have a number of different audiences that we have to address, particularly in H3A Bionet, but I think globally. So we have biologists, geneticists, clinicians, so the more biological life science community. And then we have a lot of mathematicians, computer scientists, systems administrators, who then want to learn about bioinformatics and apply that. So you need to give them very different topic areas. So obviously those who don't even know biology need to be taught, because they need to know the subject matter about what problems they're solving. And then, of course, the non-specialist bioinformatics need to learn the programming and statistics and other underlying computational methods, as well as the specialist bioinformatics topics. So when we surveyed our trainees, because we've been running training courses for the last 7 years, there was a very mix in terms of both educational background, so the level, whether they're from professor down to masters or honor students and developers. And the backgrounds were very different, mostly though from biological backgrounds. So we've decided, a group of us came together to look at how we can address these challenges globally, because there are bioinformatics trainers all around the world. Even though in Africa we have some additional unique challenges, all around the world we're addressing the same challenges. And so I've just listed some of those challenges here. And I'll go through in this talk some of the 4 sort of main areas of solutions. One is in the development of competencies and the application of those to develop new curricula for bioinformatics training. Using these 4 training, building train-the-trainer courses, and then also developing training platforms. So what I'm talking about here is not the trainee perspective. What I'm talking about here is how we build the trainers in bioinformatics and support those trainers. So the community came together. So we've got a number of different activities that have taken place in the past. So GOBLET is a community of trainers, but they generally don't have funding to run events. The ISCB has the Education COSI and the Education Committee at the ISCB, and these have events at ISCB, but these are often short and focused. ISCB is very packed and you don't have much time to get together and do much in the way of education. And then there were various needs that have arisen from different activities that we have had. So GOBLET's run some events, ISMB's run some events, but really what we wanted to do was have a more focused event. So we started these education summits. So the first Bioinformatics Education Summit, this ran in Cape Town in 2019. And the aim was to, for the first time, really bring together bioinformatics trainers from around the world to drive the development of standards and guidelines for bioinformatics training, and just build a set of resources that bioinformatics trainers could use. So these sessions were very much a mixture of breakout sessions and mostly discussions. We didn't want to have a big symposium because that's what happens at ISCB. And so we had sessions on curriculum development and competencies, how to endorse these. So ISCB was building an endorsement program for bioinformatics training. We had a train the trainer session and a session on how to develop a trainer portal. And then this was really successful and really had some great outputs. And so this was followed up this year with an education summit hosted by the EBI. And unfortunately, because of COVID, that had to go virtual. And so we all joined from around the world. So there were about 33 people. So we tried to keep these small and focused, because it's really difficult to do this in a very big format. Too many people. We had more than 10 countries represented and more than 5 different time zones. So that was obviously a bit of a challenge. So the aims there were also to cover similar topics and extend on what we'd done on the first summit. But then also we had 2 new sessions on best practices for training in LMICs and going virtual. So I'm going to talk about these 4 different topics. So the first of these is developing and using competencies for content development and building curricula. So just some terminology. So what is a competency? It's something that you need to be able to do in order to carry out your job. So you have to demonstrate competence. So for example, workers need to actually be able to perform certain tasks at a specific level of proficiency. And then when you have a competency, that competency has additional knowledge, skills, and abilities associated or attitudes associated with them. So it's the knowledge, for example, is the measurable information and things about a particular topic that can be tested. The skills are you're able to actually carry out a particular workflow or a particular task. And then the ability is how you go about doing all of this and be able to carry out this task. So ISCB has been developing bioinformatics competencies for many years. And this started quite some time ago with a publication on the ISCB competencies, where they looked at example curricula from bioinformatics training programs. And this has sort of evolved over the years. And then we started looking at building out user profiles, because you can't have the same set of competencies for very different users. So we've sort of focused then on 3 types of profiles: the bioinformatics user, so that's your life science person who's going to just use some bioinformatics tools and run some results. Then you have your bioinformatics scientist who really spends most of their time on the computer doing bioinformatics analysis. And so they're more of your sort of dry lab kind of scientist. And then the bioinformatics engineer who is enabling all of this by building the tools and developing new algorithms. Then we found that even those didn't cover all audiences. And so those 3 were broken down into more specific sort of subtypes of users. And then we also started mapping to the Bloom's taxonomy, which is basically these levels from knowledge to application, just knowledge comprehension, application, analysis and synthesis, to try and work out, to try and explain what level of competency a particular person needs, a particular persona, which that is your bioinformatics user, for example, needs to have. So we developed these competencies and released them, but then we found when we were having these workshops at ISCB that the users were having challenges in understanding the difference between a learning outcome and a competency, struggling to map competencies to existing courses, didn't really understand how to decide the level at which each different persona needed that competency. And what the Bloom's taxonomy was. So we needed to really provide better guidelines on how to use these competencies and actually make them applicable to most trainers. So in our competency session at the Education Summit, we looked at refining the competencies, because the field is in flux and we needed to keep up to date, and also to add knowledge, skills, and abilities to these competencies. And so the outputs were these revised competencies, building guidelines for mapping short courses and degree programs to these competencies, and then how to use this to either develop a new curriculum or to improve your existing curriculum. So the starting point was a set of reasonably basic competencies with these 10 different persona and the different Bloom's levels. And we ended up then, we added the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and we looked at other competency frameworks. So the end of Education Summit 1, we had each competency look like this, where we had the competency, then the knowledge and skills and abilities, and then mappings to other competencies as well. This was further refined at Education Summit number 2, which was this year. And we added additional competencies, and then you can see there's these sort of codes. These are now mapping to other existing competencies. So this version 3 is about to be released, and we've also released a sort of a mapper file, and the EBI has built a competency mapper tool to be able to say, well, if I did map to my previous competency, so for example, version 2, well, how does that compare to version 3? How do I automatically switch over the mapping between those? And then we also developed guidelines for building these competencies, so for separated into short courses and degree programs. And these just include information like what is a competency, shows the actual competency framework and provides link to other existing competencies, and then how to build these. So basically what this does is shows you, so say you're designing a new short course, You first should define your course objectives and learning outcomes. You identify the competencies needed from this competency list. You decide on the Bloom's level required for your particular audience, and then you design your content around that to achieve that particular competency. And then you can see, well, at the end, if I assess the person on this content, will that show whether they've achieved those sets of competencies or not? And then you can flesh out the curriculum. So what this global group has been doing is building those competency frameworks, providing links to course materials, and then also providing assessment examples. So how would you assess a course in terms of assessing the skills, and then also let students evaluate the course. And when it comes to degree programs and courses where you already have the content and now you want to map these to competencies, you basically get the curriculum, you find the best competencies that match to them. For degree programs, you can then score these across your whole degree program and sum those up. So then you can look at whether your entire degree program, all those modules together, allow you to achieve those competencies and see where you need to fill in gaps. When it comes to short courses, again, it's a very similar process, and you map these, and then you also add the knowledge, skills, and ability. And this really helps to find where you have gaps in your content that are not going to give you that, that are missing to give you that particular set of competencies. And then just a short note on ISCB course endorsement. So the ISCB has been approached many times to accredit courses or to endorse courses. And so they asked us to put together some sort of process for this. So there are two types of endorsements. So you can have ISCB affiliated courses and then ISCB endorsed bioinformatics degree programs. And I think this is really useful for potential employers because, you know, when I'm employing people who've done a master's in bioinformatics, it depends on where they did that master's as to what the quality is and how much, you know, was covered. So this endorsement program is really for a professional body to say, yes, what you are teaching is bona fide bioinformatics, and they will come out as a good bioinformatician or with a particular level of competency. So for this, we've developed the criteria for affiliation or endorsement, the process, the application form, the guidelines, the review process, and everything. So this is almost ready, and it will be available for people who want to start in affiliating or endorsing their courses. So the next challenge and solution I'm going to talk about is using different training modalities, and this is to address the huge demand and also to think about how best bioinformatics training can be done. So initially at Bionet, we use a range of training modalities and we have a range of training activities. So we use hackathons and face-to-face courses. We have quite a big online program where we have an online introduction to bioinformatics and then intermediate courses where we started with 16S RNA courses as more intermediate training courses. And we run software and data carpentry courses and train the trainers. And then we also have a general train-the-trainer program where we're trying to build faculty and local trainers in Africa. So what we find is that, you know, with all these different options of face-to-face versus online, we wanted to get a better idea about which of these is best. So you know that online training, you know, it's cost efficient because you don't have to pay people to move around the world. You can reach a very large audience and it's easy to share the materials. But there's the challenge is not having that local community and fostering, you know, a network, building collaborations, and also having that real contact time with trainers that's face-to-face. For live workshops, obviously you have that dedicated time, you have close interaction, you build those networks, but then, you know, it's costly and only a few people can travel. So, you know, it's hard to travel 50 people for a course because it's purely the cost and the logistics. Hackathons are a great way to do this, but they're quite different in terms of their outcomes and their aims. So you have defined outcomes. It's to achieve a particular task. It's less about formal training and it's more about learning on the job. So when we did a poll of our audience, we found that different kinds of people wanted different kinds of training. So our software developers, they wanted a mix of training, but they were quite happy to do self-study online. where some of the biologists were much more keen to do face-to-face and or formal online training where there was user contact, not self-training. So that's why we kind of adopted a mixed training model at the time, because we needed to reach a big audience for some things. For others, we really needed that face-to-face interaction. So one of the models that we pioneered and have been using is this distributed remote classroom model. So we started this several years ago for our Introduction to Bioinformatics course. In this, we have classrooms physically located around the continent. And so this allows people to travel very locally to their local institution. And then all those classes are online together at the same time for between 1 and 4 months, 2 days a week for 3 to 4 hours a day. So you have these physical classrooms, but then they're connected in this huge online network. They listen to a pre-recorded lecture. In our very first one, we had live lectures, but of course you have internet issues and time zone issues. So we pre-record all the lectures. We also now try and transcribe them so that people who don't speak English very well can see these transcriptions. And then the classrooms play these, and then they all come together live with the lecturer and do a hands-on practical, and then they have a Q&A session. And then this is supported by a good video conferencing facility and a course management system. We use a system based on the Sakai. At UCT, it's called VULA. And this allows the students to also interact with each other and with the teachers. You can post questions there, and often students from other classrooms come in and answer the questions. And they actually introduce each other, they build a community, they show each other's videos. So the classroom will join this live link as a group, and then they all wave to each other. So it's a way of connecting people who are locally connected, but remotely, virtually connected. So the advantages of this is that you reach a very wide audience. It enables interactions locally and virtually, and it saves on travel costs. And so this is an example of some of our courses. We've also run this for AGMT, which is an African genomic medicine training. And so you can see that you have your individual classes, they all linked up to this video, and you have local teaching assistants. And the local teaching assistants all get training. We have a local systems administrator who also gets training. And then the teaching assistants build up their own skills in how to teach without having to be it. And then they get to become trainers and build up those skills. We've also used a mixed model where we go online first and then face-to-face training. So in this model, we have, so we use this for a GWAS course where we first had a lecture series, and then so people attended webinars through these lecture series through webinars, so that all the formal theoretical training was done beforehand, and when they came face-to-face, they brought data and they just did a full-on analysis with a little bit of additional training. So that was a good model because you didn't spend too much of the time when they're all in one place just doing lectures. And then, of course, we've had to all go virtual. And this has been challenging with COVID, having to go virtual. And in this case, for those remote classrooms, we then had to manage all those people online. So our remote classrooms reached 1,000 people at a time. So we have more than 1,000 people signed up to these classrooms. So this has been very challenging. And so at the Second Education Summit, we actually had several sessions just on going virtual and supporting going virtual. So this included building up some documents, so listing the challenges of virtual training, some potential solutions, technologies people have been using around the world, what examples of courses people have been delivering, how do you assess them, how do you interact with the audience, and some top tips for going virtual. And of course, this might be our future anyway. So the next sort of set of activities was around train the trainer. So we know that we need to build trainers. So we need to build new trainers, but we also need to train the existing trainers to do a better job. So trainers need to know how to design and deliver courses, how to get training materials and resources, get practice in training, and build a community of trainers like we've tried to be building, and also have a discussion forum for these trainers. So there are several train the trainer courses. So the Wellcome Trust runs one, the EBI runs one, ELIXIR had one, Barnett's been running Train the Trainers. But we wanted to bring these together and have sort of a joint effort. So we came together to try and design an online course, like our remote classrooms, that could reach a wider audience and have appropriate content on that. And then also to provide a trainer support platform. So the outputs of this activity was the trainer guideline online course itself with the content, the guidelines documents on how to design and assess courses, and then the trainer portal. So the learning outcomes for a trainer course. So at the end of the course, we wanted trainees to be able to recognize that their own trainees need to respond to see if they can see how the trainees are responding to their training, to be able to design courses in terms of including the logistics, but really how to design learning outcomes and giving the courses, to develop the appropriate training materials that incorporate different kinds of learning activities, not just lectures, and then how to actually deliver these courses to different audiences, assess the effectiveness of the course, and then reflect on the outcomes of the course and how to improve it. So the course content covers things around communication, written and verbal, planning and management. So how do you plan the curriculum? How do you plan sessions? How do you actually do the logistics? Expertise and knowledge in a particular subject area. So the Wellcome Trust and the EBI, when they run the trainer, it's over around a specific topic. So they'll run the trainer, then they'll run a topic course for participants where the trainers attend this course, for example, NGS, and then they will do additional training at the end of that. So you need to just obviously have the expert knowledge in that topic area. And then also training engagement. So how do you understand the trainees and how do you interact with them? So that course is under development, and we're hoping to run the first online Train the Trainer course around sort of the middle of next year. And this is being done with Barnett, ELIXIR, GOBLET, the Wellcome Trust, the EBI, and various other groups. So we will build a curriculum and open that up. We need to worry, we won't have it global, but we need to worry about time zones. So it'll probably run multiple times in different time zones. So an additional sort of activity that we wanted to run to make sure we support the trainers is to develop a trainer portal and resources. So in this, the first thing we built was a trainer guidelines document. So this is really outlining all the sort of major things that the trainers would need to have. You know, how do people learn? How do you design the materials? Knowing your course content, how do you assess course? How do you assess the students? And then how do you let them assess the course? So this is an overview of what is on there. So if you think about a trainer, the trainer itself needs he or she needs training skills. So that's the trainer guidance documents and the online training. They need to know just the logistics about designing the course and running the course. So how do you advertise it? How do you provide the logistics in terms of venues, catering, bringing people together? And then for the designing of the course, this is where you would use the competencies and build your curriculum around these competencies and the different personas. So understanding the audience that you're trying to teach to. Then, of course, is the creating course materials, and we have links to existing course materials. How do you manage the software? So if it's just point and click web interface, that's fine. We had that in our first introduction to Bioinformatics remote classroom. So that was easy because it just relied on somebody having an internet connection. But when you come to run more practical, bigger data analysis like NGS processing, you need to have containerized workflows that can run at these different organizations. And the benefit of them running it at their own organization is that, when you run a course and people come to you and you've got everything set up in a beautiful environment, that's all very well and everything works. When they go back to their low and middle income country, they don't have that same environment. So if they can have that software packaged and running, and they actually do the course at their own institution, and they know that they can continue that analysis afterwards. Then, of course, you have to you ideally want to make those course materials available to other people afterwards. You run the course, and then you need to think about trainee assessment and course evaluation. And then you can also think about course endorsement and accreditation. So these education summits were really to try and provide each of these sort of resources at every point of this sort of training ecosystem to support the trainers. Just as an example of some of the information that you would find in each one of those components. So for example, about the skills to be a good trainer, there's the trainer guidelines documents. GOBLET's got a skills matrix. There are trainer course materials, there are blogs about training, and the resources for improving presentation skills. So it's all the resources around that particular area. And then how to design courses and how to make your training materials fair. So I'll come back to fair. But just to know that there are many existing training materials out there. So there's GOBLET's got its training portal where trainers put up their materials, and these are freely available for others to use. So you put up a Creative Commons license, for example, and other people can use these, obviously with appropriate credit to the original designer. TESS is the ELIXIR training portal, and here it's sort of an aggregator of courses, but it also provides, you can do searches for course materials there. So now just a point about making training materials fair. Obviously, there's a big push to make everything fair. So fair is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And the way to make your course materials fair is obviously you want to put them out on a website or some sort of portal that makes them findable. So they need to be mapped to some sort of schema or ontology. So we map our training materials to the EDAM ontology, which is a list of bioinformatics terms or topic areas. And then we also now map to bioschemas. So this is bioschemas is a much bigger system of schemas for the biological sciences, and then they've got some specific ones for training in terms of training events, training materials, etc. And so we map to bioschemas so that these are then findable. And then to make them accessible, obviously, and reusable, you need to have the licensing information, where you find them, and perhaps some documentation about what they're used for. So a lot of resources are already available. ELIXIR's got some resources, there are Tensible rules, and various blogs and papers about how to make your training materials fair. And there are also tools to assess fairness of training materials. So you can run your training materials or the concept of your training materials through these fair assessment tools. So just to some of the outputs of these different education summits. So basically this global community of trainers came together. As I said, it was very small to start with, and we still only just about 30 people. And I know there are many people who want to participate and contribute. So we've refined the ISCB competencies, we added these KSAs, and of course these are always open to additional extension. We want to extend to some more data science related competencies. We developed guidelines for mapping short courses and degree program content to these, or to design new ones that use these competencies. Then we've developed guidelines documents on the criteria and the process for endorsement for ISCB endorsement of degree programs and training courses. We've developed this trainer online course in terms of the content, and trying to put this course together, and we will be running this online course. And trainer guidelines documents on this training portal. And most of these are sort of, because they're always in flux, things are always changing. We've been trying to keep these going, and in among everybody else's full day job. So some of these are finished, some of them are nearly finished, but finally we've got the trainer portal content. This is the base for this content is the GOBLET training website portal, and so then other people will be linking to these, but we'll also be disseminating all of this. And I'll come back to that in the future activities about where you can find this. So just in the last few minutes, just to talk about some other learning activities. So we know that bioinformatics is, there's theory, there's practice, and so you need to think about kind of the whole learning experience. And you can have these formal courses where you have the face-to-face, where you include the lectures and the practical session, but you can do some other things. So for example, hackathons and data jamborees, this is what we run now when we have particular outcomes that we need to achieve. So we have a set of objectives where we say, we have a data set and we need to analyze this data set. We need to bring together a group of usually multidisciplinary teams. So in our hackathons and jamborees, we'll find people with different areas of expertise that come together, and then they learn from each other, because the bioinformatician will learn from the statistician will learn from the biologist. And sometimes we even have people from completely different fields, pure computer scientists, pure astronomers even, that come together to solve a particular problem. And that all bring a unique perspective on that. And then our hackathons are really to design a particular set of code, or we've had several hackathons to build containerized workflows. And so there's a little bit of formal training where we need everybody to be on the same page, but it's mostly about coming and doing. So you come into the group and you just define your objectives. There's a lot of pre-planning, and you get there and you achieve a huge amount of work, and then you have an outcome, which is a real tool or data analysis, a publication, or a containerized workflow. Another way to do sort of participatory learning is to address a challenge. So we have the dream challenges, and there are several other kinds of challenges that have been put out there these days. So the dream challenges are basically people put out a problem, like an algorithm that needs to be developed, or a really complex data set, and say, I need somebody to be able to build algorithms or machine learning or whatever method to address a particular problem. So we actually put out a dream challenge for malaria. And what we did was we started by running a hackathon. So we got data from the University of Notre Dame on malaria and a transcriptomics experiment. We brought data scientists, bioinformaticians, biostatisticians, and malaria experts together in South Africa. And in that hackathon, they built they prepared the data, they did some pre-analysis, built a challenge, and then the challenge was put out there. And then some of the H3A Bionet groups actually then got together, who weren't involved in the developing of the Dream Challenge, separately got together to to basically address the challenge. So they became a team. And so that team then got together, and it was such a big learning experience because they could work together. So you just need to just think that formal training in bioinformatics is not the only way to learn bioinformatics. Learning by doing is actually sometimes one of the best ways to get skills. The other thing we've been doing is open learning circles, so to promote open science. So for all our introduction to bioinformatics classrooms, these remote classrooms, we bring these people together and we suggest that they stay together after the course and have monthly meetings where they exchange ideas. They think about preparing for additional courses. We facilitate Slack channels and ways that they can interact so that they continue that learning process. And one of the things we've done is the Sanger Center offered us one of their online pathogen genomics courses. And we put this forward as one of the activities in their learning circles. So again, another way of extending the training experience, but then also bringing people together to learn from each other more through much more informal training and discussions. So the future plans, so we're going to continue the development of our documents, welcome contributions to these. We always need new templates in learning about how other people are doing things. We're disseminating these, so they'll be available via the ISCB website, H3A Bionet and GOBLET. We've got some publications, so we're starting working on a new publication for these updated competencies and a 10 simple rules paper, 10 simple rules for training in ILMIX. And we're starting to plan the third education summit, which will be hosted by Cabana in Latin America, potentially face-to-face, if not, then again via this remote classrooms. So some of these things I've discussed will be talked about in much more detail in the education session tomorrow. So hopefully you'll be attending those. So I just want to end by thanking all of the people that have been involved in these different summits. I can't mention all of them. These are just some of the members of the organizing committees, and of course, my team, a big training team at H3A Bionet, Verena and Pabala, my training coordinators, and Sean helps to run the training activities with me, and Samir is our project manager. But there's a big community in GOBLET, ELIXIR, ISCB, Cabana, and all those other bioinformatics trainers out there. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and thanks to the organizers again for the invitation to speak.
Thank you very much, Nikki, because this is something that is close to everybody's heart, but something that nobody talks about. I remember way back when we started the workshop on education and bioinformatics in 2001, we had 70 participants. It is heartening to hear that you have 1,000 people registering for your training workshops, just one of them. So we are going great guns. So there are a number of questions on the chat box. May I request you to have a look at them? Two of them are on school bioinformatics, so maybe you could answer the both together. So
yeah, so I'm just reading the first one. So in Africa, we certainly don't focus on training bioinformatics in schools. So when I first started at UCT, we had an undergraduate degree in bioinformatics, and even that we found was almost too early to catch people, because a few people would take that course, and then only the people who were coming into my master's program or on this program were actually coming from different sources anyway. And so we ended up sort of not running that course. So going back even further to schools, it was just not really a focus area. But then more recently, we actually developed an app called MJ in Africa. And this is a mobile phone app and website that now addresses, that basically is targeted to high school learners, and to teach them about genomics and bioinformatics, and to try and get this into their minds. And so we run an annual quiz program for all these schools, these high school learners, and this is to introduce them to bioinformatics and to get them excited about it. So those are our only activities really at school level when it comes to bioinformatics. We've done some outreach at schools, but our focus tends to be more on the postgraduate, because we just found at school that they don't really know yet what they want to do. They don't know what bioinformatics is. But I mean, I totally agree that it is where we need to start the focus. It's just that, you know, we've been so busy focusing on the postgraduate side that we haven't really had much time to focus on that. Yeah, so to the school teachers, so one of the activities in GOBLET actually is a high school teachers sort of bioinformatics program. So this has been running out of the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics, and they have a program for teaching high school teachers, so that the teachers go back and teach the learners. And this is quite practical. So they'll take an example like, say, COVID, and say, I want to be able to work out how COVID transmits. And then they will use that interesting biological question to go and teach about phylogenetics and sequencing and that. So there definitely are a number of activities sort of globally on bioinformatics education for high school trainers and high school teachers. In Africa, we haven't focused that much. We did try when we've had the same group come to South Africa to pull them together, the teachers, but their curriculum is very focused, and it's very it's much less flexible in African countries.
So perhaps I could recommend that the Indian team from BioClose actually provide some of their results to GOBLET, and they could even provide some of their materials and be a member. And for the high school teachers, if there is a link on GOBLET, then we can refer them to the people who asked those two questions. So this is fantastic, and I see that everybody's been very, very happy with your talk. I think it's been a great effort, and it must be quite early in the morning there in Africa. So I know that we are very grateful that you could join us and provide us this enlightening talk. And before everybody disappears, I would like them all to switch on their videos so we can take a group photo with Nikki present. Thank you.